Hey everybody, this is Brandon Wagner for Tribeca Color Salons and Crazy Color. Today we're going to be talking about how to blend gray with our Crazy Color. But first, let's get into the haircut. First, we're going to establish a perimeter line using what is called one-finger graduation. One-finger graduation means I'm taking my index finger and I'm laying it upon the back of the neck. And as I go around the perimeter shape, I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping the hair taut with the same even tension, draping it slightly away from its point of origin to create a little bit of horizontal graduation. Now here what I'm doing is I'm taking the front and I'm going to be opening up the face framing by taking a mohawk section first, playing into the center, but I'm cutting it at a negative 45-degree angle. As you can see, I'm actually cutting closer to the head shape, moving out. That's going to create an upside down concave. Now I'm going to be connecting the back into our graduation by doing a concave interior layer. But what I do is I take all the hair away from its point of origin, pulling it into the center, imagining a line is pointing 45 degrees from the ground, shooting up over her head. This is going to open up the interior of the volume, but it's going to maintain all of the perimeter weight. Now we're using a notching shear to finish off the haircut. We're going out at a 45-degree angle, and we're using this in a bricklayer technique, so it really shatters the perimeter. Be careful, do not cut with notching shears at the hair's natural fall and point of origin, otherwise it'll stack up and you'll actually see lines. Always make sure that you're moving your hair away from its point of origin whenever you're doing any sort of texturizing technique to avoid this effect. So by combining these techniques, we were able to create a very quick, effective shattered bob. Now the color application is going to be relatively simple, and just to explain what we're doing is we're working with her previous color. She had done a boxed color several months ago and it has faded out onto the ends to level 7 orange, but of course her base is level 5 with about 25% gray. What I'm using is vermilion red at the new growth. The vermilion red is a red violet, and because it's a red violet, of course it has a blue component. Blue gives us opacity, and that is going to help us with the gray blending. When you're choosing colors to achieve gray blending with Crazy Color, you have to make sure that you're using one of our blue-based colors. Otherwise, it'll just be too sheer and it won't give you any coverage. Since she is previously colored, we don't have to worry about gray coverage on the ends. So all I'm doing is I'm taking vermilion red at the new growth, blending it into fire at the ends of her hair on her previously colored hair. We're going to use foils just to make sure that we separate so that my vermilion red stays at 100% at the new growth, and then we're blending into the fire on the ends. The technique I like to use here is cross-hatching. So I take the hair 45 degrees away from its point of origin, I drape it over the foil, away, over towards the left or the right, depending on where the starting point is. And what I do is I take the vermilion red, paint that through, put the fire on, and then I actually create almost like a triangular shape as I'm painting it on. And so this creates a natural ombre effect. When you're trying to achieve gray blending, there's a few things that you have to make sure that you incorporate into your formula. First of all, of course, like I mentioned before, the number one thing is it must have a blue component. Blue gives you opacity, while yellow increases reflectivity and red gives you richness of depth. So what we need to do is make sure that blue is in there so that we have coverage on top of that white unpigmented hair. Now normally, of course, Crazy Colors will be used on pre-lightened hair, so this really doesn't even matter. But in a situation like this young lady didn't want to go for an extreme color. She didn't want to have that regrowth of that lightener, so we're just painting directly over her natural color. So because we are working with a direct dye, it cannot oxidize her own natural color. So her own natural color, once the vermilion red fades off, is going to return to its basic natural level 5 with no color left on top of it. So this is a great way to temporarily gray blend without any sort of line of demarcation growing out. Now let's say that you're trying to create some sort of gray blending, but using either a lighter tone or something that has more of a yellow or an orange base. What you need to do is, even though you want to stay lighter and brighter, incorporate at least a touch of the natural black. I know that sounds really scary, but if you just add in maybe 1 gram of natural black for every 30 grams of your color, it will deepen it just a little bit, but really what it's doing is throwing in that blue component that's so necessary to create a little bit of opacity. And I think that this is a great way to introduce a client into more of an interesting color palette without any sort of dedication, because of course the direct dye will of course fade off in about, say, 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the health of her hair. A lot of times we're looking at using crazy color to always create an extreme color, say a blue or a purple or bright yellow, whatever it may be. But we can use on these clients that are not pre-lightening their hair. It's not going to have a huge impact on darker hair levels, but it will allow for the gray blending, of course, which we're talking about now. But also it gives them a touch of color without that dedication. They'll be able to recolor their hair or even lighten it in after 6 weeks with no impact from the direct dye being on their hair. And of course, we are normally using crazy color on pre-lightened hair. In this situation, of course, there is some fading in the ends from the previous box color, which allow more intensity on the ends, but you can apply this on non-pre-lightened hair.